Hey you, my name is Thomas Tomscar Ridgewell.
I'm Elliot Goff.
And I'm Eddie Bowley, and welcome back to Eddache!
I didn't feel good, that felt wrong.
So for those of you who surprisingly don't know, I work for Turbo Punch, making videos for Tomscar and Dark Squidge alongside Tom and Elliot. But we also created a card game called Muffin Time, which we launched on Kickstarter and raised £1 million. Now I know what you're all wondering, and yes, I have a beard now. But you're probably also wondering how we did it. Maybe you're curious to see the behind the scenes, or maybe you too want to make a game and or run a Kickstarter as well. Then here is the making of, or should I say the baking of, Muffin Time. There's no sponsor this month because I'm sponsoring myself. In October 2017, Dan and Phil launched a board game through Big Potato Games called Truth Bombs. Around this time, Tom was also offered an opportunity to pitch his own game, so he came up with something called Depression.
The basic idea was it was a Snakes and Ladders style dark comedy game that would also raise awareness about depression, and the idea is that you have to go from the start to the end of your day with depression, and at random points you will, hit upticks or downs. And I pitched it to a mental health expert that I knew, and they never replied. And so I just decided, well, it's probably a bad idea then. And that was it.
After some time in July 2018, I felt that the chance to make our own game would be a shame to waste. So
over the weekend, Eddie came to me with a PowerPoint presentation that he'd put together about a card game that he'd come up with.
Aston Movie is obviously Tom's flagship series, so it made sense to make a game based on that. I basically took Aston Movie and boiled it down to fast-paced and random, and proposed an idea where a timer was set to completely random intervals, and the objective was to keep passing around whose turn it was before the timer went off. Basically hot potato, but with Aston Movie. And the guys really liked the idea.
But I remember being encapsulated by the idea and being just made some card designs and printing them out on paper and cut them out and just here you go. I decided to call the name Die Potato because it's like hot potato, and we used the Asdorf character who's called Die Potato. He's not called Die Potato, is he?
We brainstormed the idea further together and had ideas where some cards had unique rules and conditions to them. But then Tom and Elliot playtested Die Potato while at MCM Manchester. Oh look, a comic convention, remember those? And then suddenly the game wasn't as fun as we thought it was.
When we were playing it in the office, we were all for it at the time. We were all like, yeah, but trying to introduce it to people who have no idea and just want to play a game, everybody just started getting real frustrated straight away.
Yeah, essentially what we realized was that it was a math game.
We started to forget whose turn it was because it was +2, so you have to go 1, 2. And they were like, wait, whose turn is it? Is it mine, or is it, if I do this, whose turn is it? And it all became a lot complicated.
So Die Potato died, but Tom came back with a brand new idea.
Well, I guess, yeah, Muffin Time was kind of born out of the ashes of the Die Potato game, because while playing that game, it was like, oh, this isn't very fun. Sorry, Eddie. Bruh. But you know what would be more fun? Is just this crazy game where every single card does something different, and it's all, as random as the Aston Movie characters. And so we came up with this different game called Random. Then we came back to London, and it was very easy to break the news to you.
I'm fine. Now it was time to pitch to Big Potato.
I'm Nat Aves, and I work for Big Potato as their social media person, but I also helped with the Kickstarter.
So the process began with the infamous Skype call.
Oh, let's not talk about that Skype call.
The people in Big Potato who knew what Asdorf was were like, oh, this is good, this is exciting, I love this.
The call went very well up until I started having what one could describe as a manic episode.
How can I forget the mad rant? Yeah.
And I got extremely angry over something that was said in the call, and very nearly blew the whole thing.
That was touch and go. That was a bit scary. We were a bit like, do we want to continue with this?
Yeah, I made a bit of a tit of myself there. It's genuinely amazing that Big Potato didn't just walk away at that point. Props on them for not, I guess.
After narrowly avoiding getting fired before we were even hired, the next step was to produce a prototype.
The best thing to do is to, even if it's just really shitty printed out on paper, get a playable version of the earliest stage of the game.
It began, as all classic stories do, with a spreadsheet, where we listed pretty much every single Astor movie joke to translate them into a functioning card. Why did it have to be every Astor movie joke?
I'm crazy. I guess for me that was just part of the unique selling point, was that every single gag in Astaf would have a card that represented it, and also just gave us so much room to come up with some really weird, crazy cards.
Oh no! Giant flying sheep!
But yeah, ultimately, it wasn't necessary to have a card for every single gag, but... Oops.
During this process, card types began to evolve. Action cards, counter cards, trap cards, and a fourth type, cards that did absolutely nothing, pointless cards.
I think, didn't the pointless cards come from Die Potato?
Well, we had to really start hammering down the functions and limiting the number of things that cards could do, or else you were just going to have a game that people would never be able to understand. The main worry for me throughout the entire development of this game was that we were going to create the Homer, the car from the episode of The Simpsons that Homer makes, and he just puts absolutely everything into it, and it's this horrifying monstrosity. And that was the fear, that we were going to make a game that had too many types of cards, too many rules, and it became completely inaccessible.
So pointless cards as a separate card type were dropped, although there is still an action card that does absolutely nothing. By August 2018, we had a rough pass of 160 cards. We arranged playtests with friends, which allowed us to identify some problems early on.
There was a lot of stuff that we didn't really think we needed to consider going into it, to do with like inclusivity.
For example, we originally had cards to do with people's sexuality or gender.
And then we played the game with a transgender person, and it was like, oh no. We wanted to make it, as inclusive as possible, and avoid awkward situations, I guess.
It was really bad because we didn't want people to be outed in front of the family, because we wanted this all to be a family game, and as inclusive as that is, it could also have serious implications on people's lives, which is not good.
We knew that our audience, the young teens and that would have no problem playing with their friends, but if you're playing with your family and there's a card that's to do with your sexuality or gender identity, you're potentially going to put someone in a situation where they either have to like lie and make themselves very sad about that, or out themselves. It's like, that's not fun. That's not fun. So we either removed those cards entirely or just reworded them in a way that would avoid those situations.
And then we invited some friends over for a playtest party. And we know how to party. It's not this.
I mean, the first thing that came out of that massive, 10 people game playtests was that it was awesome. Was that people were having fun and wanted to play again. People weren't doing us a favor by playing the game. They were enjoying it. And that was sort of the first time that it was like, oh shit, this could work. This could really be a thing. But obviously what we were doing is, while we were playing the game, we were just furiously writing notes on our phones every time someone got stuck or had to ask a question. We'd need to figure out rewording on cards or to clarify the rules.
We removed a lot of cards that required going outside or moving around furiously, and it's ones what required which will never get played because nobody wants to do them.
We handed over a prototype deck to Big Potato for their own playtesting.
Once a week, every lunchtime, we gather as many people as we can and we play through any prototypes that we may have. And I think that was a really good test specifically for this game, because there were a lot of people free that particular day who had no idea what Astaf was at all, and they were laughing and enjoying the game. So we were like, okay, that's a really good sign.
Early concerns were raised that 160 cards would be too many, so we suggested 200 cards instead. Whoops.
Big deck.
The solution was to split up the 200 cards with two 40-card booster packs, which would keep the 120 base deck at a much more reasonable price.
This is the really boring side, where it's all working out what the actual cost of creating the game is going to be, how heavy it's going to be, what the price point is going to be.
One thing we learned is if we dropped first-time players into the whole 200 cards, it was a lot. It was a lot of rules and probabilities, whereas if it was just a more manageable 120, that's a much more comfortable size to get used to the game and the mechanics.
It just makes it more accessible for people who don't have that amount of money, and they can buy these expansions to really add more to the game.
What was originally proposed would have just been not being able to pitch at a price that we think would have worked really well, because it's a card game and people for more money expect a bit more whistles and bells.
It was also decided to kickstart the game.
You know, Astaf is an online brand, so why not launch the game in an online space?
We thought it would be the best way to have a good PR campaign around it, because it's much easier to pitch games to people when you can be like, oh, and it raised this much on Kickstarter.
You know, we knew sort of the explosive potential of the Astaf brand, so we wanted to make it available to a lot of people at one time, and the only way to do that really was to kickstart it.
People who ordered on Kickstarter get the games, and then from word of mouth it can build and build from there. So it made sense that something that already kind of had like a presumed pre-made audience would be good to go through the Kickstarter process.
So from September to October 2018, there was more playtesting and changes to the cards, with some major creative liberties to stick to the goal of representing every Astaf joke.
This period was kind of the most scrutinizing period we had, where we were literally going through every single line, every single word, every single meaning.
In our hearts, we know that there is a card for every single joke, but I wouldn't blame anyone if they cannot figure out what the root origin of some of them is.
You and I are bound together.
I remember in particular, like, I want to be a pie.
Billy, no!
How do we turn this into anything? And I think it eventually became wannabe, which is just like, you just get in on the action, and that was our loose interpretation of, I want a thing that I'm not.
Yeah, we just took literally one word from the sketch and built a whole card around it. We had to keep breaking it down to like what is the most base element of this joke or this script, and there were we bent our own rules a lot just to make it work.
Well, I remember what was a huge issue for us was the light switch. The light switch lasted so long because it was initially just if someone turns on and off a light, and then it kind of just mutated because nobody did that, and we just tried to figure out a way to make it work with a joke.
We kind of like had to start thinking really hard about like the most ridiculous contingencies. Could this card be played at any given time? Even then, there's still cards that technically. There's like the standing up school. The last player to stand up loses.
I'm gonna just real quick play standing up school. Oh shit! Oh god!
What if you're playing with someone in a wheelchair or that maybe can't stand up? And I think the solution we came to that was just like, well, if you play it, you're a dick. It's like, I mean, you can play it, you're just a shitty person.
Until finally the full 200 card second prototype was produced. It was at this stage we had to make another major change. We couldn't call the game random anymore.
We decided not to call it random because that's an SEO nightmare. Like, typing the word random into a search engine isn't really gonna bring much up, and also you can't trademark that.
Random is you can't really copyright because it's also a part of other games, like something random you can't do that and copyright it.
Yeah, I mean, I loved random as a name because I felt it was very simple and concise, and it did describe what the game would kind of feel like, because the goal going in was to create the Mario Kart of card games, if you will, where it is a bit random and chaotic, and I really, really was attached to that name for a long time.
Yeah, Muffin Time just had much more instant recognizability, and lots of people know of that phrase from the song and from just seeing it around on the internet.
And eventually I realized it was the right decision, but I was sad to lose random.
And as we roll into 2019, work began on finalising the card designs.
Because initially it was just, I took screenshots and just put them onto the cards, and this was a time where we could actually kind of make original art for it.
So you have to think, like, what is the function of these cards? How abused are these cards going to get? And then work on the design and durability around that. With Muffin Time, they needed to be like a durable card, but they needed to be fun and exciting to look at, but also easy to read at a glance, because you're going to have loads of different cards in your hand.
Like, so that there is no confusion. It's said at the top and it's also kind of visualized at the bottom.
So you have to really think about the function and then the design after the function.
Later down the line, we actually switched up the fonts. Like, Impact stayed throughout, but it was the actual description below it that changed. So it was initially Ed's font by Ed Gould, and we then changed it later down the line when it became kind of harder to read, so we changed it to more of a actual Asta font, keeping it all lowercase and everything.
It's always lowercase, yeah. Everything in Asta is lowercase, no capital letters.
We really like the idea of having it handwritten, but I think the compromise was just it's better for it to be legible than look good in the end.
There was also a lot of discussion about the box for the game, and Tom had a very specific vision in mind.
I want round box. I want box that's round. Like when we did the Art is Dead, the Asta movie book, part of what made the book unique was that it was a weird shape, and I thought, hey, let's do that for the card game as well, and I thought it'd be funny to have a round box, if nothing else, so that when we did the announcement video, there could be a gag where we keep trying to put it on a shelf and it just keeps rolling off.
Big Potato have actually made some wacky boxes before. We've, Bucket of Doom is in a bucket. Clickbait came in like a arrow-shaped box. We've learnt our lessons with weird boxes. Is the gag of having a round box worth the extra cost? Because then your margins increase.
I just thought it'd be funny, and everyone disagreed. They just said this is going to be really difficult and expensive, and it's going to be hard to stack on shelves. Stop it.
So you have to think like, I still want it to look fun and interesting, but it also has to conform to a point.
As the Kickstarter started to creep up on us, there was a few soft announcements until the formal announcement on Tomscar.
It's muffin time!
We definitely went into the announcement video with the intent of being a little subversive. Nothing about the video really says, hey, this is going to be a Kickstarter announcement that's just 3 guys talking. Because, yeah, people have a natural aversion when they think they're going to be sold something. But, you know, I felt so strongly that, trust me, you're going to like this, that I wanted to get them in by any means possible.
Now let's get this kick party kick-started! This required research into how other similar Kickstarters operated and cherry-picked the elements we thought would work for us, with a focus on the overall presentation.
Because it's like a big long page and you look at it and it's just full of information. So we needed like exciting pictures and GIFs to like break it up and make it not just a giant wall of text.
We also set a goal amount, except it wasn't really the goal amount. What a twist.
The initial goal was £10,000, and that's because we knew that we could make everything and not make it at a loss at that minimum amount of money.
There was careful consideration given to the stretch goals, not just deciding what they were, but also deciding to keep them secret and reveal them over time to sustain the campaign throughout.
When it came to picking the perks that would be unlocked once we hit a certain financial amount of pre-orders, we genuinely didn't know what to expect going in, and we were talking with Rob Denblaker over at Cyanide and Happiness, because they had just done their Trial by Trolley Kickstarter, and we were saying, you know, we've never done this before, we don't really know what the best thing to do is, and so what we ended up settling on was that we would wait a day or two into the Kickstarter to figure out what was going to be realistic in terms of, you know, what do we think we can reach, and what is going to be the best sort of price point to reveal these perks.
It's better to wait and estimate rather than just take a guess.
And from Big Potato's point of view, this made sense because then we could re-look at the stretch goals and what they would be and have a better idea of what we could actually afford to produce, because each extra thing adds on to the cost. So holding back and then deciding again once we knew like the trajectory of the Kickstarter definitely let us do a few more fun things that we'd never planned.
Well, one was hit while we were waiting, so we not only announced the other goals, but we announced that people had already successfully unlocked something or other. No one was having to pay extra to get these things. We didn't want to make extra tiers where, you know, someone was giving us a ridiculous amount of money just to get some extra trinkets. We wanted to make it so that everyone got everything.
To ensure diversity of affordability, we had options for just the game. No extra perks, just the retail version of the game. And a kind of premium tier of sorts that included all the perks, including the boy.
The best thing to do would be to encourage people to get the best package. Like, it's the one with all the whistles and bells, what people would probably want the most anyway. But having the plush only reserved for that meant that the increments were only going up in £5. It wasn't that much of a push to get the best thing, the little plush. I'm holding it here like I'm holding it, but I don't know where Oh, a dog's just walked into the room.
It actually kind of didn't work out that way, though, because most people just naturally went for the best version. They didn't really need much incentivizing.
So day one rolled around and we hit the goal in an hour. And then 100k in a day. Oh boy. Throughout the campaign, we had planned pushes on Tom Scar and Dark Squidge. So following the announcement video, we had the Content Olympics.
Who will be the smartest? Who will be the fartest?
It was the premise to recycle content.
We had something like 2-3 hours worth of footage of us playing games that was only seen once by a couple thousand people. So Elliot had the idea to recycle and you actually use that content in something that gets put out, and we will also push the game pretty hard at the end of every single video.
Thing that you skipped to make Rick. A condom.
Which did not that well. People don't like too much content. They want like a little bit of a break. But they were good fun.
What do you say in chess when one of your pieces is threatening the king?
Oh, fuck off!
This was followed by a brand new Astov movie, which included the formal announcement of The Boy.
The actual Muffin plush, which was the kind of the biggest plush in my opinion, is like that was coinciding with Astov 12. Wow, correct answer.
Astov Movie 12 served the purpose of being better than Astov Movie 11 and redeeming myself. Oh, and also it pushed the game.
But arguably one of the most influential pushes was an actual demonstration of the game, Let's Play Muffin Time.
It showed our hand very well in terms of like, this is what's fun about the game.
You get the basic premise of the game, but you don't really understand what's fun or why this works. Kind of like Uno, you can describe how it works, but people are like, I don't really get it until you actually start playing it, and it's like, oh, okay. So people seeing that will actually be like, oh, okay, I can see me and my friends playing this.
You cannot force a hat on me. That is no.
It showed that we actually had made a game that was playable and that was fun, and I think that was, probably a pretty hefty selling point for people that were on the fence. I think the most fun part of Muffin Time, the biggest unique selling point, is the trap cards, and the Let's Play obviously allowed us to show those in action. It shows that even us who made the game can still be consistently caught out by the trap cards.
You're right. Backstories. If another player reveals an event from over a year ago, they discard 3 cards. It was a crushing defeat then, and it is now.
But then a couple weeks after that, we also did the Astov Movie 12 deleted scenes, which weren't really deleted. We just made them new for that, but that's what I call them.
There were various other social media pushes with live streams, videos, and even card trailers.
We show a card and show kind of how it works in Astov style, to try and get people kind of understanding what each and every card is, because the issue with promoting a game where every single card is different is that there's so much going on that they don't know what to kind of latch to. But they kind of like slowly stopped working, really.
No one really cared, weirdly. I don't know if it was because they were on social media, but yeah, people just weren't super interested in these individual card promo videos, so we just kind of stopped. The people just didn't really care, which is fine. So we just put our efforts into other forms of promotion.
You can't have too much of a good thing, except you can. Please stop. It's too much. Social media was one thing, but to really get out of our Astov movie bubble, we had to look at things like advertising and publications.
It was definitely good to widen the audience as much as you can, because there's only a certain amount of people in all the different audience pools, and it's good to hedge your bets and spread it out a bit.
Of course, running a campaign of this scale was going to run into maybe a little stress.
Where do I begin? One of the things that we didn't anticipate is how much of an admin side of it would be. There were hundreds and hundreds of messages asking very specific questions about the game, where we were mostly able to go through and add those to the FAQ, but it was still like a lot of time and effort to go through and answer every single one. They may not buy the game if they don't know this thing, so you don't want to miss out on a sale by not being communicative. But unfortunately, that was me answering all the questions. In the end, it was like 25,000 people who ordered the game. That's a lot of messages.
As a byproduct of having a campaign doing quite well, it had a lot of, let's just say, very interested third parties.
Kickstarter, actually, they say that they don't allow that and to report it if that happens, but it happens a lot. There were lots of people being like, we will fulfill this for you. We can make this for you. And then lots of people being like, how have you done this? How have you made this? How is it so successful? And you're just like, no.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a few opportunists come out and were saying like, oh, we can take care of this or that for you, but I largely didn't need to reply to those because we already had all of it covered.
And due to a surprising demand, we added extra options for 2 boxes, even 4 boxes.
It allowed people to club together so they wouldn't have to pay all for shipping every single time. Yeah, it proved much more popular than I thought it would. There was a crazy amount of people who bought 4 of the game.
And while the campaign was going on, we had even more playtests, but this time with strangers.
Well, the difference between those playtests and the ones we've done before is now we were actually giving people questionnaires to fill in when they were done. You know, what did you like about the game? What didn't you like? You know,
So some of them were fans and some of them were just like complete random people.
and yeah, it was a lot of strangers. You know, we'd been playing with our friends and people we knew, who obviously sort of had bias and inherent mercy towards us and our feelings, but we wanted to get people that didn't really know us or the game at all.
We made sure that we had people in whose like favorite game was Monopoly, favorite game was Snap, and then just like put the game in front of them and let them go to town. And from that we could really easily see like exactly where people stumbled up.
We just give them the rules, put the rule sheet on the table, and just stood back and couldn't help at all to see if they get stuck or not. And also heartbreaking because it was like sometimes they get stuck and it's like, I want to say something, but you have to let them work it out by themselves. And if they don't, then that's a huge note to write down for those cards.
But then we actually went to the loading bar, so like a gaming pub, and we got a bunch of straight up random people who were just having a night out to play the game, and we bought them drinks in exchange for playing it.
And that was good because I think in the end we managed to get some incredibly drunk people to play the game, and they understood it and they had fun. So that was a really nice litmus test to see like, is it still understandable once you've had like 3 pints of beer?
Because we were still finishing up the game at that point, we had this freedom to bend the game around how people were playing it.
The result of this sparked a few changes to the game and its terminology.
Well, we had a couple cards that was like, all males pick up 2 cards, or all female players pick up 2 cards, which is why we changed the language to all boy players and all girl players to fall more in line with gender identity.
It made us add rules to encourage more sportsmanship.
Yeah, because people would be like, oh, let's do this mini game, and then someone would counter it and be like, oh, I guess we just don't have fun now, and no one enjoyed that.
And probably more importantly, more game enders.
We made all 10 testers play the game at once, and it just went on and on and on. This needs more chances for the game to just end.
Like some games just last so long, especially with a lot of players. So we added like 3 or 4 more game enders. What changed the rules at the end, so it changes how many cards you need to get to Muffin Time, or it can just make it so that this is the final round.
We always, I think, knew that we wouldn't be able to get rid of absolutely every single issue in the game, which is why there is a part at the end of the rule sheet that's like, have an argument. If you're stuck on something, fight it out and then decide as a group what to do.
And that was it. The campaign was over.
Finally, we're free.
We were nowhere near free.
No, we weren't.
We had so much work to do.
We had done it. The campaign was a huge success. We raised £1 million. But we're not actually millionaires.
Yeah, don't go crazy and spend all the money that comes in from Kickstarter straight away, because what you actually have at the end of the day is just a tiny little pile.
Well, that first initial boost, the first couple days said that, like, this could be possible. This could happen. And then, it was a hard slog to get there. And it was pretty demoralizing at points, obviously, because, it just felt like it was slowing down and down and down. So it was just a very, very pleasant surprise that right at the end, in the last couple days, again, it picked up as it had in the first couple days.
And with the Kickstarter over, there was just one more thing we needed before we could swing into production. We had sample copies before, but this was to be the final proof. The version that will be made for 25,000 backers and onto retail. So once we had designed the Kickstarter exclusive cards and checked for any tipyos or mitsakes,
we had to go through this big process of me figuring out the difference between effect and affect, which I still don't entirely understand.
We head into December 2019 and everything went wrong.
So the final proof one was a bit of a cluster truck.
We were like ready for everything to go and like set everything in motion. But it all hinged on these final proof copies to make sure that they were 100% perfect, because we didn't want to go into production until they were ready.
And it was getting closer and closer to Christmas, and we just desperately wanted to be all together in one place to actually do it.
We had all had an equal stake in this game. We'd all put an equal amount of work into it, and so we all had to be there together. It was a big deal for us, like emotionally.
The big stress was that if we missed this time with the factory, then it would be Chinese New Year, and then that would put even more delays. And it was like around Christmas time, we were all stressed, and like the Big Potato office was like closing, so we wouldn't be able to make any changes.
The courier straight up just losing the game for a while.
And we had to like send Elliot in a taxi to go and get it, and it was just like, what is happening?
One of the Big Potato people went and picked it up in their car to go bring it to their office, and I had to go all the way into like Camden to go meet this person with a boot full of boxes, like bring them up, put them into a sack, and then run back to my house. They all had a beer and opened them up and went through all the cards.
Then when you guys finally had them, you found all these errors, and my heart broke. I was like, no, this can't be happening.
But it was happening. The shiny cards were just outlines and missing white fills, printing blemishes, off colours. Sadly, the game had to be delayed.
I think it was just kind of rushed out as a demo copy, so not a lot of attention. Because I guess it's like the same thing as ordering like food at a fast food restaurant, but just before they close. It's like, just fucking get it out there.
We knew that 25,000 copies of the game minimum, just for the Kickstarter people, were going to be made, and it was like we had to look at each card and be like, are we okay with this mistake being in 25,000 people's homes? And the answer was no. However, that turned out to be the least of our problems.
If I was stressed back then, I had no idea the stress that was yet to come.
I was at a hospital the other night where I think there were actually a few coronavirus patients, and I shook hands with everybody.
The unimaginable happened, and there was nothing we could do.
All the factories closed down completely, so no production could happen.
Then there was a delay in what shipping containers were available and how many boats were available. Like the whole world's economy was just backed up, so whatever delay there was just ended up getting doubled.
It was just completely out of our hands and incredibly stressful.
All we could do was update people as we got information, but sometimes that information would change. We just had no power, just none. And people wanted answers, rightfully so, but we couldn't give them. And luckily, pretty much everyone was super understanding.
We chose probably the worst possible time to release a game about being social during social distancing.
We made this card game at a point where it felt like, card games and tabletop gaming was becoming the thing to do. Then suddenly we all got put in a situation where no one can meet up now, and it's just like, oh, fuck, man. Cool. It's an in-person game, which was such a safe bet. It was such a safe bet. God damn it.
On the plus side, we managed to just squeeze in the filming of the official How to Play Rules video.
We managed to luckily fit that in before all the chaos.
But the thing about Muffin Time is it is a really simple and easy game once you understand how to play it. I think it's definitely a game that you learn by playing.
I feel like I have that with every single board game I've ever played. I never really get it straight away, but once I've played it, I'm like, okay, I'm good, I'm ready.
It's usually the end of their first game, isn't it? And they're like, oh, I want to play that again now.
When you've got your friends, you don't want to sit there and like read out the rules to them. So having this video that quickly and entertainingly explains exactly how to play the game is such a useful tool. And also it really helps with SEO as well, because people searching for that game, that video pops up. It's much more exciting and enticing to see it and understand it than just like see a picture of it.
Finally, in summer 2020, the game started to arrive.
Yay, it's finally over!
But it's not! It's never over!
But it wasn't, really.
And backers finally got to play the game for the very first time.
That was really something special, like actually seeing people have it. and people being so excited and happy with all the like goodies that came with it, it suddenly made it feel very much all worth it.
It's been such like a long thing. There's been so many ups and downs and so much stress. To be able to see real people out in the world with the game and enjoying the game definitely made it feel much more tangible and like, this is nice. It was worth all of this humongous stress to have this great game out in the world and for people to enjoy it.
Because, you know, for 2 years, it had been nothing but theoretical, but now people actually had it and they were going to start to play it, and that was amazing.
I just want to see a tournament of it. I want to see more players. I don't want to play, I just want to watch. Like, I still think I tweeted it out as a joke, but to do like a Muffin Time tournament where we're the commentators and we have to watch people play.
There were still some unfortunate launch problems. Duplicates, missing cards, misalignments, and some boosters printed on the wrong size and material.
Apparently within the normal margin of error with any sort of production of this scale, but anytime we had an issue like that, like Big Potato did their job and very well, and they went, okay, yep, we'll replace that.
And that brings us up to today. 2 years ago we had an idea for a game, and now it's an actual thing that I can hold in my hand and go, look, it's a game, we made this. So if you're interested, then check the description for where you can get the game for yourselves. And thanks to Tom and Elliot and Nat from Big Potato for their time. Their Muffin Time.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy Muffin Time.
There's the fan art, and there's the other content. Oh, there's the other edits. I'm sorry.
Tom Scott out.
Buy the game.
Play the game.
Play the game.
If you're interested in making your own board or card games, then there's a couple of blog posts by Big Potato that help how to develop your idea and what to do with it next. I'll share those links in the description below as well. This was a big old boy. This is my biggest video today. So if you like this sort of thing and you're interested, then please consider supporting me on Patreon.